It's really loaded. Hi, friends. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name's Ashley Ariana, joined by the wonderful Tom Jensen.
Hello.
Hey, Tom. How are you doing?
Doing well. Doing
Sometimes
okay?
I'm a little bit hot and a little overheated. Um, for anyone in the Bay Area / like Northern California, it's like 90 degrees right now. But no, I'm doing really well, and I always enjoy when we have lots of NFL actual news to talk about.
Yeah.
So figured we would talk about today was the official cut day for the NFL. I figured we would talk about all that stuff. Earlier when I was singing, for people who don't know the behind the scenes of like StreamYard, there's a little like start and end button. And sometimes I push it and it's like, bam, you're recording. But then sometimes it just loads for a long time. Same thing with ending it. Like sometimes I'll press end and I can read a whole other question. And sometimes you're just sitting there and you're like, bye.
Okay.
And then you're like,
And it just cuts
what's
off,
up?
or
So,
you end up vamping for 20
but
minutes. Yeah.
today at 1 p.m. was the official deadline for all NFL teams, not just the 49ers. And I figured we could start right away. Just wanted to say hi to Daniel. He's in here all the time.
Yeah.
Well, maybe before we get into who's on the roster and the cuts and stuff, I want to say some big news for me is that Elijah Mitchell is actually out for the entire season. Now,
Yeah,
Mitchell's always
he's always hurt, but that was still
hurt.
shocking. Is who knew?
I
They
didn't.
kept
I
that under wraps.
didn't
Nobody knew that Mitchell was out for the year. Nobody knew that, and then all of a sudden it drops, and boom, okay. But I think that at this point they have to let go of Elijah. It's just he can't stay healthy.
I agree. And this is his final year, like under contract too with the
Right.
team. So it does feel like he's played his last down with the 49ers. Plus, Mason, although I think a lot of people felt like he earned it even prior to this year, it definitely feels like he's being more embraced by the team and Kyle Shanahan as a whole and has earned that position. But yeah, I guess just like from a info reporter type standpoint, I wish I understood like, did this happen in practice? When did this, is it the hamstring injury? I know that's been a reoccurring, like it's tweaked it,
Right.
he'll be out there, but I didn't know, is there, did something happen this week in practice? Because as far as I heard, he was actually out there. Like he wasn't even on the injured list.
Yeah, this was brand new news that was total surprise to everybody, and we're just okay.
Yeah.
But the bottom line remains is that Elijah Mitchell's days as a Niner are over.
Yeah. And a little bit of, I mean, not like from a human element, that's a shame. I definitely think that he had an outstanding rookie year and had a great skill set. It was just health was always like, unfortunately, the thing that seems to be his final, like the reason he's not going to be with the team anymore was kind of his major concern and problem throughout his NFL career. Because without that, he would have,
if he was healthy, he'd be an in-demand running back. He would be a great back for the Niners. But unfortunately, it's just for whatever reason, his body type couldn't hold up to NFL contact.
Absolutely.
So at this point, you just let it go.
And then, for additional surprises for me, Hafunga was activated, and we'll go position by position and talk about who made the team. But I was pleasantly surprised. Now, I still think there's probably no rush for the 49ers to, make sure he's playing week 1. But there is an option where he could have started on PUP and like been out for 4 weeks no matter what. And they, I guess, felt confident enough that they at least wanted to have the possibility to bring him back earlier than that if they wanted to.
It shows they're confident in his recovery time frame that he could play sooner than we've been led to believe. I don't think he'll play in the opener, but I think he could play in Minnesota in week 2.
See, that's very interesting, and I'm excited. I know that I think it was last week he had met with an additional doctor and kind of got clearance to start participating in like football related practices instead of just on the side. I actually think it was still on the sideline with himself, but more with trainers and going instead of just like rehab type moves.
Yeah, so, harder work is just that he's ramping up physically, but he still needs to get to contact.
Yes.
And so, we'll see. Could be week 2, could be week 3, but you don't make a move like that unless you expect him to play at least by week 3. So that's good news.
And then for my final surprise, which maybe I'm missing some. Actually, I could just think of another one. Just the fact that the 49ers only kept 2 tight ends. I made a tweet about this where I actually said I respect that they did that and I'm proud of them. Or not, I don't know, proud of them because it's...
Well, you like the move.
Yeah, I like the move because I didn't predict it. And I didn't predict it because I thought that there was lots of tight ends that should be on the team. I just thought in order to save themselves the embarrassment of the fact that they highly drafted tight ends and now we're cutting them, within a year, I thought that they were going to have too much ego for that and that potentially a position or a player at a different position that maybe is better at their position would have gotten cut so that they could keep some tight ends just to not have
the body and to have the body for practice and for prep going into the Jets game, but also that they didn't want to admit that their past 2 drafts have been busts. But I like the fact that they owned up to it, that they said, no, these guys are not NFL talent. We have to let them go. We gave it our best shot. They aren't what we need. And so moving on from Latu and Willis, and that was justified based on what we saw in the games.
Absolutely. I think Latu had one catch out of multiple targets. Did not impress. Braden Willis also didn't impress. I was happy that they didn't keep a body, just have a body there to save themselves the embarrassment of kind of admitting that they've made mistakes at that position group. It's so shocking that the team that drafted George Kittle, who's arguably the best or the second best tight end, depending on how you rank them in the NFL, cannot draft a tight end.
Yeah, he was a one-off. And you say, what?
Yeah.
If you can draft Kittle and evaluate that he would be great in the league, why can't you do that again?
You would.
But part of it is that it's just you really never know. It's an inexact science, and then part of it also is just that you have to figure out what do we have here, what don't we? And I give them credit for saying, okay, these guys aren't it. I also give them credit for saying that we need to keep the best 53 players. And the 2 backup tight ends were not in the top 53. And so that's a smart move.
I will say with that, and I don't know if we're jumping ahead, but because I know we're going to go position by position, but I do think that Ronnie Bell, keeping him was when we go through who they kept on for wide receivers, I wrote, I think on Twitter, 6 of the 7 that they kept, I imagined that they would keep. I didn't anticipate Ronnie Bell. And I think Ayuk needs to give him his first paycheck because I feel like that's just trying to have someone on the roster. Or maybe I will say I've heard from reporters that have been to camp, especially not this camp, but last year's camp. I know that there was people who had faith in him. So maybe he just had a bad preseason, but in the games that I saw, I felt like he was given a lot of opportunity. Him and Latu, both, I felt like were targeted a lot. And it was kind of like, if you want to be on this team, show it now. And I thought both of them did not deserve it. I was proud of them for not keeping around Latu. And when I saw Bell, I was a little surprised. Now, I could be wrong because I don't really pay that much of attention, but maybe does he have a special teams ability that I'm not certain about?
He can return kicks, but he's had fumbles. I think that the only reason Ronnie Bell made the team is because they don't know if Ayuk is going to play in week 1.
Okay.
So they wanted to make sure they had 6 receivers in the roster for week 1. That's why Ronnie Bell's on the team. If Ayuk signs, Ronnie Bell will go.
Bye-bye, Ronnie Bell. Okay. Well, those were my surprises. Some people said Ambry Thomas making the team is also a bit of a surprise. I don't feel as down on him as like the overall consensus if you're like on 49ers Twitter, but I also don't think he's like, incredible in any way, or not even incredible. I don't think he's like a quality starter. I'm not like horrified that he's a backup. It is a bit confusing as someone who doesn't see every practice why Ambry continuously gets the spot over Samuel Womack, because in the limited opportunity, and once again, this was years ago, so maybe it's not as much anymore, but I always felt like Womack had a knack for the ball, at least like he was catching interceptions, knocking it down. But then at the same time, Ambry Thomas has played more actual NFL games, and maybe they just feel a little bit more comfortable if they're going to have, a seventh cornerback. It's not like they're going to rely on him, hopefully, if everyone else is healthy. Did Tom freeze, or is that me? Tom. Let me know if Tom is frozen or if it's me. I think it's Tom. I think it's
Tom. That was weird. It went out on me. I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. It's probably, we're going a little bit later, and I feel like we've talked about people.
Yeah, I have trouble with my internet later in the day.
Thank you so much for doing this.
We go when we can.
You sound clear. You sound clear to me, anyways.
Okay, good. So in terms of that, it's just, I think that Ambry will be put on IR tomorrow, and they'll try to bring Rock Ya-Sin back. I think that's the plan.
Yeah, because he has like a forearm.
This is part of just negotiating the 53 and the way they wanted to do it. So if they claim Rock Ya-Sin off waivers, it's just, that's the way they wanted to approach this. I don't know the machinations of why they did exactly this, but that would be my expectation, is that Ambry isn't long for the roster. He'll be put on IR soon, and then they'll try to bring Rock Ya-Sin back to replace him.
Okay. That makes much more sense to me now. I feel like it was Nick Wagner. He was the one that hypothesized it would be Ambry and then John Feliciano, because both of them have injuries right now. And I feel like Kyle Shanahan said that they were going to be on IR, so it was a little bit surprising that they weren't. Kalia Davis was, if I'm not incorrect, right? Do you know why certain guys they put on today and certain people they're waiting?
No, that's a dynamic of the NFL I'm not up to speed on. Of why do you have some guys that you put on IR and some guys that you save to put on IR after cutdown day? I don't know the reasoning behind it. I just know that that's why they're doing it. It has to do with cutdown and 53-man and what they want to do in terms of trying to get people back onto the roster. But yeah, Feliciano is not expected to return until middle of the season. So he's gone for at least 8 weeks. And Ambry is same thing, is that he's not expected to come back until at least then also.
Yes.
So both those guys will go on to IR. They'll just go on to IR tomorrow. Why they do that, I don't know.
I do know that there's a new rule where 2 players can be put on IR before final cuts and then be brought back mid-season. The other guys on IR must be on the 53-man roster before they're placed on IR, and then they can come back mid-season. So
there's your 2 players, Feliciano and Ambry. But why would you want to bring Ambry back? I don't think Ambry has proven that he's an NFL player anymore. I don't think he is. And all these DBs that can play, keep them.
I do agree. Okay, we'll go to the actual who was waived, who was released, all that. For people who don't know or just need refreshers, because I feel like these words are used a lot in conversation, and I kind of get them, but then when I saw the list side by side, I was like, wait, what's the difference again? So when a player is released, usually released is a veteran, and they become a free agent where any team can have them. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom.
Yeah, anybody can sign them immediately.
Yes. If you're waived, usually those are like former draft picks, younger guys, and there's a lottery type structure, but it's done in the order of the Super Bowl, same thing as the draft. So the 49ers are 31st, right? Yeah. And it starts with 1, and the player each team gets the opportunity to claim them off waivers. So in order to sign a player who's on waivers, they have to clear all the way till 31 before the 49ers could pick them up.
Right, but there's some teams that won't pick anyone up. There are other teams that will be looking at players at different positions. So I don't think the Niners will be in a lot of competition, hopefully not, at tight end. But they will be in a lot of competition at edge and defensive tackle.
Yes, I agree. And the D-line is something that I feel like when we get to it, they don't have as much depth as maybe we would anticipate for a team that usually prides themselves on the trenches. I think their trenches are lacking. But for players that have been released, it was O-lineman Ben Barch. And tell me if you're surprised by any of these guys.
Yeah, just fire them off, and then we can talk about it after that.
Perfect. O-lineman Ben Barch, wide receiver Robbie Chosen, O-lineman Chris Hubbard, D-lineman T.Y. McGill, O-lineman Brandon Parker, tight end Eric Subbert, hopefully I said that right, wide receiver Trent Taylor, thank God, I was concerned that the Kittle friendship would get him on the roster, tight end Logan Thomas, who they literally just brought back, safety Tracy Walker, D-lineman Nick Williams, and then cornerback Rocky Sin.
So of those, I would say that they want to bring Rocky Sin back, and depending on what happens in waiver pickups, possibly T.Y. McGill. And the rest of them we'll see. But I would think that their first preference is to try to get people that they can buy. And people that they can claim in years, somebody that they can sign. I think that's what they would like to do. The only one that I think would be a priority for them in bringing back of that group is Rocky Sin.
Okay, why do you think that they chose to release him versus a guy like Ambry, let's say?
Because of what you decided on the role of two people can come back in IR. I think that's what that was.
Okay. And then additionally, tight end Logan Thomas, that one took me a little bit by surprise because they had cut him. And then, 3 days ago, right before the game, brought him back, and then it's kind of messed up. They're
what are you doing?
Bodies in this game.
Well, that might have been it. Is that they wanted to make sure that they had enough tight ends that could play in the final preseason game. That's why they brought him back.
Do you see him being a guy that they might try to have some sort of handshake deal and have him on the practice squad at least? In the camp,
he's a veteran, so I don't know if he could even qualify for practice squad. He might have too many years in the league already.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Because I guess it took me by surprise because I went to one practice and I will say it was earlier on in camp, but Logan Thomas was like the second tight end. So I was actually surprised at the guys that they kept. And then I know Stephanie was high on Eric Saubert. So I don't know if you found either of those guys.
Well, I wasn't high on any of them. I think that Kittle is the only true NFL talent, and the rest of them aren't. And so it's just, what can they find off the scrap heap? And clearly that's what they decided to do.
Why did they sign Robbie Chosen? They gave him $1 million 2 weeks ago.
I don't know.
I
don't see how you bring.
I thought that was stupid.
Yeah, maybe he's somebody that they've targeted as a practice squad guy, where they had Chris Conley on the practice squad for a couple of years. Maybe they see Robbie Chosen in that kind of a role.
Okay, I could see that. And then, do you think they'll try to have Trent Taylor be a practice squad guy? Who knows if?
No, I think Trent Taylor's done.
He's just a preseason warrior for the 49ers?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me really quickly, I'll look at the comments. They gave Cody Schrader guaranteed money. They give a lot of these guys guaranteed money, to be honest.
But it's not a lot.
Yes.
Okay.
Wanted to say hi. And then Bell's role will be bigger this year. Heard it here first. Interesting. We were just talking about Ronnie Bell, I think is who you're talking about. And then Isaac Yadam will be cornerback 3 is Kenny's prediction. And then 49ers fan?
Maybe.
Throwback says, hit that like button. That's right, baby. Hit that like button. And just facts. Because that's what we're speaking here, Tom. Facts.
That's right.
So that's the guys that were released. Now, the guys who are on waivers, I'll mention those to you, Tom, and you can tell me which of these guys you think the 49ers are going to be hopeful make it through waivers. Once again, 49ers are 31st, so these guys have to clear a lot of teams. But as Tom said, teams aren't always looking for the same things. The 49ers are going to, it's also, they're not only prioritizing the guys they waive, they're going to be looking at other teams and seeing tight ends or D linemen from other teams that they'd rather have than these guys. Also, some of these guys, I might not be able to pronounce their name. So my bad if that's a thing. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. That's just a thing. Okay. Offensive lineman, Isaac Alcorn. Defensive lineman, Evan Anderson. D lineman, Alex Barrett, which I was kind of, I don't know, I feel like I've heard that name a lot. So I was like, oh, interesting.
He made some plays in the preseason games.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And then D lineman, Shaquille Brown. Did I say that right? Jonathan Gravin, not Gavin. Interesting. Surprised me, Jalen Graham, linebacker. And then wide receiver, Danny Gray. Could have saw that coming. Just another wasted third-round pick. Kyle, what are you doing?
Yep.
Offensive lineman, Sebastian Gutierrez. Offensive lineman, Jarrett Kingston. Also a guy who I thought was a bit of a surprise. As we said, Cameron Latu, given tons of opportunity, unfortunately didn't earn the right to be on the team, in my opinion. Cornerback, Chase Lucas. Safety, Jalen Monet. Wide receiver, Tame Martin. Quarterback, Tanner Mordecai. I feel like the 49ers might, we'll talk about it in a second. O-lineman, Drake Nugget. Tight end, Mason Pline. Running back, Cody Schrager. Tight end, Braden Willis. And cornerback, Samuel Womack. So those last, honestly, like 6 guys, I feel like are guys that the 49ers could want on their practice squad. So when you look at the waived list, tell me 1 or 2 players that you think they're going to hope to have back.
Definitely Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah.
They better be praying that he doesn't get picked up by somebody, and we'll see. If he doesn't get picked up, they're lucky because he's a good talent.
He looked good in the preseason game, but they're just in a hard place because I think all 3.
Right. And Kyle was always going to take Allen, but my question is, okay, why? He's a journeyman, dime a dozen vet. What value are you getting? Who's going to say, I want Brandon Allen, as opposed to who's going to say, I want Tanner Mordecai? You also need to put some chips down on Brian Greasy's evaluation. Greasy picked Mordecai. He said, okay, you can get an undrafted free agent. Who do you want? He took Mordecai, and Mordecai looked good.
Yeah.
So they're hoping Mordecai is still there for them to bring back. If they lose him, I think that's a big mistake.
I think that's
to keep Allen and get rid of Mordecai. If they lose Mordecai, that was a mistake.
It feels like when it comes to waiving Mordecai and keeping Allen, I mean, Allen was cut by the Bengals when the 49ers picked him up. And no, it's not like there was like a bidding war on him. Like teams weren't trying to get him. So it kind of feels like it could have been safe to release him from the team.
Expose him to waivers. Yeah.
I understand that Kyle, I feel like I get Kyle's mindset about like, it's not so much that Allen is a better player, but he has more experience in the system and maybe knows like what Kyle is looking for more. And Kyle has talked about Nate Sudfeld and Nick Mullins being like some of his favorite players, even though obviously in the game they weren't the best players. They really understood Kyle Shanahan's head. And I feel like he enjoys having veteran quarterbacks who aren't necessarily that good at playing, but who can convey the message to the starter that he would want.
Yeah, that they can take on a mentor role in the quarterback.
Yeah.
And
I think Allen probably does a good.
And Allen can do that well. And so Kyle valued that.
Yeah. And I honestly, I don't even think it's bad to value. I just think like when you're making that game, like today seems to be it's all about a gamble. You're waiving and releasing certain people, hoping that you can get them back. You're keeping some people on the roster because you are afraid that other teams might see something in them. And for me, I just think when you're making that choice between Allen and Mordecai, that you should be. I felt like there should have been confidence that you could let Allen go and that teams wouldn't be like hunting for him.
But that's not how Kyle thinks is the problem.
Yeah, where like Mordecai, he's younger, so like he can actually potentially, become something where the league knows what Allen is already, right?
Yeah, and has decided we're not that interested. So there we are. Steve-O's saying Greasy makes picks now. Well, no, it's just Mordecai was one of the undrafted free agents that Greasy recommended they pick up.
Yeah.
It's been reported that Kyle told Greasy, okay, pick an undrafted free agent quarterback for us to sign, and that's who Greasy picked.
Yeah.
It's not a draft pick. It's just him saying, I like this guy. It's a recommendation.
Well, they took his advice with Brock Purdy, and look at how that turns out. So I think that they have trusted him.
And that's honestly, part of my point. He's proven that he can evaluate quarterback talent.
Yeah, and I was
let him continue to do that and keep the guy.
Exactly. But like even with it, like I would give him that same chance next year too, because even though they waived Mordecai, I think he proved again that he could find someone with talent. Like I think he was able to continue to do that. Now,
okay, so looking at the list, so the waived list, Isaac Alarcon, he could be kept because he's an international player, and an international player doesn't count against your practice squad total. You're allowed to have one guy. Gutierrez has been that guy for a long time. Alarcon is a better player, and so they might be looking to have Alarcon in that role, where he makes the practice squad as the internationally designated guy. Evan Anderson, they might look at. Alex Barrett made some good plays. It depends on if they sign somebody off another team or not. Jalen Graham, I'm sure they'll try to bring back. Danny Gray was a mistake the day he was drafted. I'm glad he's finally gone. He was the bane of my existence. And Jared Kingston, they definitely want to bring him back. He played well in the last exhibition game. Cam Latu, if they have to, maybe, but I think they've seen what he is, and they're saying, no. Tay Martin, no, he made some bad mistakes. Drake Nugent, possibly. Mason Pline, I could see them wanting Mason Pline as a practice squad guy because he's got the frame to be a tight end, but he needs to learn how to become one, and he has to power up. He's got the frame, but he doesn't have the power behind it to be a great blocker.
He had a lot of hype behind him going into camp this year. So
yeah, a lot of people loved him, but they're looking at the measurables and they're not looking at the guy. It's just
that makes sense.
He's not ready to play in the NFL yet, and he doesn't have the core strength power to block. If he develops that, given his frame, he could be a piece that makes the team down the road, but probably 2 years. Cody Schrader, that's somebody they'll want to bring back. Braden Willis, again, it depends on who else they can get. If they get other tight ends they like better, then no. Sam Womack had missed assignments. I think that they are not interested.
He did bad that last preseason game.
Yeah. So that's it for those guys. That's the main ones. Then would be Mordecai, Jalen Graham, Jared Kingston. Those are the three that I think that they would prioritize. Maybe Cody Schrader and Pline, so that'd be 5.
Drake Nugent, he was a guy that also, like, I'm thinking of guys who had hype kind of going into camp, but maybe didn't go up to their
played
potential.
For Michigan, and they had a great offensive line, but I think he's undersized for the league. I just don't.
Is it something that with a year, like rookie wise, like you can add muscle to your frame, or just structurally?
You could, but he's short. He's got short arms.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that he's the right investment.
Got it. That makes sense. Okay. Well, now I think it would be fun because the 49ers put out like graphics with each position group, and
that's why they were late in announcing it.
Oh my gosh! Did you
roll my eyes into the back of my head?
Did you see they made a mistake too? They had Christian McCaffrey.
Where's Demo?
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason. They had their numbers split up, and then they had Demo as a safety. So they were struggling a little bit. Good thing, $1 billion organization, and definitely no longer a lemonade stand, which they used to be.
Yeah, because it's really important to have the graphic.
Okay, so but what inspired this is I saw like one of the graphics that had all the offensive linemen, and the 49ers, I want to say like our favorite devil's advocate, quote tweeted it and said, easily the worst offensive line in the NFL. And it got me thinking, is that true? And how do we think that these position groups stack up just in general? So we'll go position group by position group. I'll name who's on there, and we can say, do we think this is, solid? We can even, do you want to rank them like A through, or we'll just talk about them. So we're going to start with quarterbacks. They kept 3, which was a new rule that the NFL had that like allowed you to keep 3 anyways.
It was a reaction to the Niners having all the injuries in 23.
Yeah. Literally, I feel like that's what caused that rule.
Why it
happened. That's not even a joke. Yeah. So quarterbacks, Brock Purdy, Brandon Allen, Josh Dobbs. How do we feel about that?
I think that's solid. That Purdy is an emerging starter that's going to keep getting better. He comes off of the first off season where he's had a chance to work on developing his game and his body. So I'm expecting good things from Brock this year. I think Josh Dobbs played better than Allen and should be the backup. But since it's Kyle Shanahan, my expectation is the backup is Brandon Allen.
That stresses me out.
Security blanket over talent. Yeah.
You don't like boo, Tom. I don't like that prediction. Did you watch the QB School who does excellent breakdowns? He actually did one on Josh Dobbs. Did you see it?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. I thought that was.
Yeah. He does a great job breaking it down. You see the film and then you say, okay, now I get what you're trying to teach me.
I'm such a visual
reinforced
learner.
Really well.
I'm such a visual learner. Like even in school, I feel like it really helps me to have to hear the words and then have someone pointing out what they're doing, and I can be like, okay, this is exactly what's happening. Yeah. So I totally recommend it.
That's how your mind works. Mine's the same way. I'm a visual learner too.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that Josh Dobbs will be QB2. That is my prediction. But
hope.
I understand that you have a little bit less faith in Kyle Shanahan. Running backs, they kept 4. So that we have Christian McCaffrey, Jordan Mason, Patrick Taylor Jr., and Isaac Guerendo. Patrick Taylor Jr., I was surprised by that one a little bit.
Well, I'm guessing that Kyle, again, wanted the veteran. He's valuing experience. And I would expect over the young guy. Cody Schrader gets talked up a lot, but what did he really produce? His stats weren't that great. So I can understand why Kyle went with Taylor, but Taylor at the same time is going to be an inactive almost every week. As long as the other 3 guys are healthy, Taylor will be a game day inactive. He's a safety net.
Okay.
And they could be looking at other running backs. If there's somebody that catches their eye, they could bring in somebody new and cut Taylor. But for now, Taylor is a safety net and somebody that Kyle can trust because he's a veteran.
Are you anticipating that Kyle, or maybe even Christian McCaffrey, because we've heard before he calls his own number, especially with this injury that happened to him this offseason going into Jets week, which is, 13 days away. Do you expect that they're going to have more of an even load for Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason?
I hope it'll be more balanced, because now that McCaffrey's been paid, he doesn't have his motivation of, I need every carry, I need to play every down because I need my stats, because I need my money. I mean, all of that flows, but all of that was last year. This year, it's in Christian's financial self-interest to let his foot off the gas a little bit so he can prolong his career. So I think he'll be more willing to share the load, at least somewhat, more so than he has in the past with Jordan Mason.
Do you think that we'll see Isaac Guerendo getting, the end of game touches? Are you anticipating that he'll be more special team or returner?
Well, he's their kick returner, and I think that they could use him in spots where it's just if we've got a play design where we think we can get Garindo the ball in space, that's what we want to do. Okay. So gadget plays, I think that he could get in for gadget plays. And if they need to in the rotation, he might get some carries here and there, but he won't get a
lot. Sounds good. And then fullback, obviously I don't know, sometimes I put that in running backs, but I'm counting it, but Kyle Juszczyk is there. Now, the one that was surprising, but we're, happy about is tight ends, George Kittle, and then Jake Tungus. Will you tell me about Jake and maybe what your takeaways from him are? Obviously, everyone is familiar with Kittle, but why did he make the roster? How has he looked?
Because I think he's the most balanced of their tight ends in terms of a guy that can block some and catch the balls thrown his way. He's not as dynamic as Kittle, who would be. He's not a yak player, but he's a reliable guy where you can say, I need a block. This guy can do that. I need a catch. This guy can do that. So I think that he was the default just because he can play both ways. Doesn't mean he's great. He's not. But for now, he's the best they've got. And obviously they're going to go shopping and see what they can do. Philadelphia cut a guy named E.J. Jenkins, who I've heard good things about from Eagles fans who thought he had a decent shot of making the team and played pretty well.
Veteran, is he a rookie?
Young guy.
Younger. Okay.
He's gone through a couple of years of practice squads, but hasn't.
Now, the 49ers usually keep 4 tight ends. Am I correct? Because they have 3 tight end sets sometimes, and usually they like to have like one extra guy.
And they need 4 given how they play. There needs to be a rotation. And given that Kittle is coming off of core surgery, it's possible that George can go down. So there's an issue there. They're going to need to get a receiving tight end that can step in if Kittle gets hurt, and they're going to need a power blocker. And so they'll be shopping for both of those, and we'll see what they can do. Hopefully there's not a lot of teams that are shopping for tight ends in free agency coming out of all the cuts from roster cut day, and they can get some guys that they believe in. We'll see.
This is something I thought of just now. Which one is more detrimental, having to play the season without George Kittle or having to play this season without Brandon Ayuk? George Kittle, right?
I think Kittle is more important.
Position, he doesn't have they're stacked.
Well, and it's kind of like Trent Williams in the case of just the fall from the starter to the backup is so steep.
Yeah,
that's part of the issue, but it's also that just Kittle is integral to what they do, and they need him. And somebody like Ayuk, while he does a lot of things well, and I hope they keep him, there's still the issue of you've got other guys that can play receiver. Even if you need a blocking receiver, you can start Juwan Jennings and make do. If Kittle goes down, you're going to be throwing the ball to Jake Tungus? Really? I don't think so.
But you remind us again of the guy's name for everyone watching to keep an eye out on.
This is just a flyer. This is just, again, based on what I heard from somebody I've talked with.
I'm coming for you.
I could be wrong. I probably will be wrong because this is based on somebody else's opinion, not mine. But a guy that I trust, that I talk football with, who knows the Eagles, says E.J. Jenkins is a pretty good player.
Jenkins?
Yeah.
Nice. Cool. Okay, from the Eagles. And is he released or waivers?
I don't know. I just know that they let him go.
Okay. Well, hopefully he's just released. That way the 49ers have a better shot at him. Although I will say I don't think many teams have the 49ers issues at tight end. So they might be
that's the key. I don't think there's going to be a lot of teams shopping at tight end, but the Niners are going to be front and center saying we need to.
Because most teams took care of that in the draft and in free agency.
Yeah. Most teams didn't strike out at tight end every year since drafting Kittle. And that's what they've done.
Shucks. I hate when that happens. Okay, wide receivers. They kept 7. I predicted they would keep 6, as I said earlier. But big group. Something to be noted is Brandon Ayuk is considered on the 53-man roster. He is
because he showed up to camp.
Yeah. And I think now it's whether a deal's done or not. He's on the team.
He's on the 53. Yeah.
Okay.
But you don't know if he's going to play or not, and that's why they have 7. They want to make sure they've got 6 receivers for the Jets game.
That's because normally they keep 6, correct?
Yeah,
that makes sense. That's why I put 6, because I didn't see their little mental gymnastics where they were considering not having BA on their team. I was like, oh, obviously that's not a possibility, so they're not even going to prepare for that. But I was giving them too much credit. They were like, no. It's absolutely a possibility that we go into week 1 and the season with our star wide receiver on the bench. So we have to give ourselves a plan B. Plan A, guys, what are you doing? This was very pivotal. But anyway, so they have obviously Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ricky, who is struggling with that shoulder injury, but was at the most recent practice. So it'll be interesting to see. So far, he's practiced, missed practice, missed practice. So you don't want to like keep re-aggravating something that's not fully healing. Hopefully that's not the situation that they're in with him.
They'll need to monitor it, because if he has any danger of re-aggravating, they need to just tell him, look,
yes,
this year's done. Have your surgery, get your shoulder taken care of, and then be ready to go next year, and you'll be a solid part of our rotation.
Yeah,
they'll see if he can overcome this, and if he can, then he can contribute.
I have a question, and then I guess neither of us know because we're not doctors and we're not Ricky's doctor specifically, but when they're doing the thing where they're asking him to play, I'm wondering, is it something they're trying to get him through the year without performing surgery, and then during the offseason they give him surgery? Because if they're just like pain managing him up until that point, maybe I'm incorrect, but my opinion would be it would be better to get the surgery now, have him building up strength, like rehab it, going through the whole rehab process, rest, recover, building up strength. That way he's fully prepared for his sophomore year, instead of kind of like hit or miss week to week throughout the year, getting in car crashes, aggravating it, pushing through with medicine, and then kind of having to get surgery and speed up your recovery and healing process.
It's just they don't want to let go of their first round pick in a year where
it looks horrible, obviously, on that.
So that's why they're doing it, and then they're assessing: can he play? Can he play through it? Can he get better? My opinion is that he's going to need the shoulder surgery. As Johnny said in the chat, he played baseball, and that injury lingers. I had a shoulder problem too. And eventually it's one of those things where it's never 100%, and it's always in danger of going bad. And ultimately you are better off getting the surgery. But the Niners aren't willing to do that yet. So they want to assess.
They don't want to take that.
Can Ricky get through this, and can he be a contributor this year? Because obviously that's what they would like to have. But shoulders like this, just my experience personally, and Johnny's as well, is
not something that just goes away.
It's not something that you can make go away just by wishing it away.
Yeah,
you can play through it, but this is also the NFL, not baseball.
Yeah,
and
like you're getting into car crashes every week. They didn't feel comfortable having him like play with a non-contact or without a non-contact jersey on. How are they going to put him out in actual game?
Yeah, is you actually going to put him out there in
bigger,
game?
Stronger, and taller, faster than him, hitting him at full speed? Like if practice where he's literally not being tackled is hurting his injury to the point that he can't practice for multiple weeks, how's it going to handle an actual hit?
Right. Well, so I think that they're going through an assessment process now and seeing just how is the shoulder moving, how is Ricky moving, how does he feel, how do our doctors think about it, and they'll give it an assessment of a week or two, and then I would imagine that they'll come to a decision if that they're not seeing the progress they hope to see, that they'll tell them you're better off having surgery.
Agree. Really quickly, I want to address Al Bundy's question, and I'm going to throw it at you, and then we'll get back to our groups. But we already talked about this group, so I feel like we can discuss it. Will Kyle Juszczyk be used in 12 personnel as a tight end too? Interesting, creative. I'm not sure, but
if he has to be, but I would see it more as just motion within a play where he then lines up on the edge of the line, where it's not something where he lines up as tight end 2. It's something where via motion he becomes tight end 2. I could see something like that.
Yeah. I feel like they get very creative with their offensive personnel, so it wouldn't shock me. I don't, know if it's going to be something they rely on. Like, they need to get 2 more tight ends. Juszczyk is not the tight end. So if you're saying, like, are they not worried because they have Juszczyk? I don't think that. I think they are worried and they do need to add there. But if they get creative with Kyle Juszczyk, yeah, I can see that happening occasionally. They do.
Yeah, well, if injury forces them to use Juszczyk as a tight end, they can do that. But I don't think that would be what Kyle wants to do.
Yeah, it's not what they want to rely on, for sure.
No, he's going to want to sign 2 more tight ends.
I agree. Really quickly, because we were talking about the wide receivers. We were talking about Ricky. Jacob Cowing has looked very promising, both in practice. Everything that I heard was he was standing out and looking like a veteran, even more so than Ronnie Bell or Ricky Pearsall. So that's exciting to see more Jacob Cowing. Good for Chris Conley, making it actually on offer. He's been a guy who was on the practice squad before, but was heavily relied on in important games, and it paid off for him. So congratulations to him for that. Like I said, I had predicted the Debo, BA, Jawan Jennings, Ricky, Cowing. Conley, I hadn't predicted Ronnie Bell, but your reasoning for why they probably looked into keeping him is in case Brandon Ayuk doesn't play for week 1, they like to have 6 wide receivers ready to go.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that a surprise to you, or right away did you kind of see that logic?
No, I put the pieces together initially when I heard that Ronnie Bell, but then when I thought about it and said, well, yeah, but Ayuk might not play, so that's why.
See, I'm still under the that's not a possibility in my mind. Although I've already we lost our bet a long time ago because I was like, oh, he's gonna be there day 1 of training camp. That's when they're gonna get it together.
Close.
That's what happens when you have too much faith. So for offensive linemen, they kept 8 guys. We got Jalen Moore. And by the way, they kept 8 guys without Trent Williams counting because he didn't show up. So they were able to put him on the did not report list, right?
Right.
Interesting. So Jalen Moore, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, who has impressed, Colton McKivitz, Spencer Burford, Nick Sakel, John Feliciano. Now, I'm anticipating John Feliciano will be going on IR. I think you were talking about that earlier.
Yeah. And where you had mentioned earlier in the stream that you can bring 2 players back from IR, and I would think that Feliciano would be one that they're targeting. That's why they did what they did. But yeah, I would expect that they put Feliciano on IR tomorrow, and then they can bring back Kingston, or they can keep that spot open if they're confident that they can extend Trent Williamson.
They should be confident about that. They don't seem to be alluding to being confident about it.
See, yeah.
Me out, but I don't. I'm like, this is in your control. I don't understand. I hate that they've been like walking around like, oh, this stuff just happens to us. I'm like, this is not like no one is shocked yet. Like, you are the one that can change this.
This is your strategy, and it's your pocketbook.
Exactly.
You've got the means to deal with all of this.
Now, so before I move on past the offensive line, someone reacted to that offensive line earlier, and my dad in the chat kind of reiterated that.
Dad agreed, and your dad is correct. It is the worst offensive line in football without Trent Williams. That's how important Trent is to what they do. And you look at it and say, okay, without Trent, last 2 years, 2-6. Purdy in the games without Trent last year threw 2 picks in each of those games. Trent played in half a game, and they lost that one too. Now, he is absolutely essential to the team in terms of running left, which is what they do well, and in pass protecting Purdy, where he doesn't have to worry about the left side. If you now put Jalen Moore there, good luck. Alan's saying it's the worst without Trent. With Trent, it's not the worst. Without him, it is.
How
Jalen
is
Moore,
Brock Purdy
Aaron
going
Banks,
to?
Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz. The worst, in my opinion, offensive line in football. The Patriots exist. I don't think the Patriots are worse. And that's partially because I don't have a lot of faith in Jalen Moore.
Yeah, I definitely don't have faith in Jalen Moore, and the preseason did not make me any more confident. I felt like Trent Williams rang John Lynch and said, "My price? How's it looking? How's it looking?"
Yeah. But Al raises a fair point that the Patriots O-line is bad. But regardless,
but also
at
the
best,
Patriots
the most optimistic. Yeah, the most optimistic take on this 49er offensive line is it's 31st.
Yeah,
not good.
It's not. That's not necessarily that doesn't instill confidence to be like we're either the very worst or the second worst out of 32 teams. It's like, okay, well,
yeah. How does
you're
Purdy
bad.
feel about that? He can't
and
be confident.
How is Brock Purdy, one, supposed to look impressive, two, supposed to stay healthy behind that offensive line? And that should be the 49ers' number one concern.
And
is Brock Purdy's health.
How do the Niners use their bread and butter of Christian McCaffrey left without Trent Williams? And possibly without
they already don't run right because you can't run right. The only thing they can do is run left. And now you can't even run left. What are you going to do? You can't run in the Kyle Shanahan system? Oh, that's going to be a problem.
And what are they going to need to beat the Jets? The run game.
Absolutely. They can't even wait on this. It has to be something. Now, John Lynch is talking, for people who don't know, tomorrow at 2:45. Now, the GMs always talk after roster cutdown day, but potentially he'll be. Do you think? Is there?
I think people are reading hope into that, and I don't think that's the case. I think that it's just this is what John always does. Okay. After cutdown day, he talks about the roster. It's sort of
so people are just excited and
people are wishing that they're following the Niners' lead of trying to wish something into being. Don't do it.
Don't.
I hope that's the case, but don't expect it.
Now, I think about 2 days ago, I was just reading the article from NBC Sports Bay Area. Steve Young went on KNBR, and he was talking about Trent Williams, and I was actually a little bit shocked by Steve Young's take. Now, maybe I shouldn't have been, but he pretty much alluded to Trent Williams being selfish for wanting to up his contract offer just because he can, and said that Trent Williams should kind of take into consideration that although they have this year of the Super Bowl window, he said the Super Bowl window isn't closing, but it's narrowing. And if Trent Williams was smart, he would kind of put his money to the side, since the 49ers and Jed York already made him the highest paid offensive lineman in the past, and that he would play on this contract. So, with this team right now, so that they could win a Super Bowl, and that he kind of needs to observe the situation they're in and put the team first in this situation. I can read his exact quote if you want, but
you've summarized it very well. Yeah, that's exactly what Steve had to say.
I was a bit surprised. I don't know.
I was taken aback by it that it was so pro-Niner, anti-Trent. I think that you have to look at this. The context that Steve didn't apply but should have is the Christian McCaffrey extension.
Yeah.
After you took care of McCaffrey,
and no one put that on Christian. No one called Christian selfish or egotistical or out for himself. And Christian is, because Steve, something that I maybe didn't mention in my brief summary of the entire conversation is Steve Young also said Trent needs to be aware he's getting older for running back age and strain that's been put on. Christian McCaffrey has been utilized over and over. He has taken a pounding, and he is, I think, 28, which is old for running back age.
Old in running back years, yeah.
Yeah, so
but still, my point is that the team took very good care of Christian. They gave him a new contract, which took him to the highest paid running back in the league. They gave him a raise. They fully guaranteed all the years that weren't guaranteed before, and they gave him language saying that we might pay you going forward. We'll see where we're at when we get there. And so Trent is saying, look, you did this for Christian McCaffrey. I'm even more important to this team than Christian McCaffrey. Now you got to take care of me. I don't have any guaranteed years left after this year. I'm the best left tackle in the game. I'm paid $20 million. Tristan Wirfs is paid $28.12. Now you have to, and as Josina Anderson just reported from ESPN, that Trent's looking to get paid.
Yeah.
And what that means is over 28.12. He wants to be the highest paid tackle in the league. So he's probably looking at 28.2 as a starting point. And that's $8 million more. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And I understand where Trent's coming from. He's saying, look, this team doesn't win without me. I am absolutely vital to this franchise and its chances.
And he's not wrong.
Yeah. And I am the Super Bowl window. And then that's something that I've always said, is that Trent's the Super Bowl window.
Absolutely.
Is that when he fades, they're done.
Even the players themselves have in press conferences, when asked about the losses of Brandon Ayuk and also of Trent Williams, even they have said, not that they've said losing BA wouldn't be impactful, but the way that they talk about the loss of Trent Williams is like, you guys don't understand the importance of Trent Williams on this team.
Right. And the players
our quarterback's not going to be healthy. Our running back's not going to be able to run. Like, you can't even get to the playoffs without those things.
Yeah, well, Trent Williams is the proof of the rising tide lifts all boats in terms of the offensive line being that impactful. And because Trent is so good, that's what he does. And if you take him away and you replace him with the worst backup left tackle in the league, you're going from the number 1 to number 3 left tackle in the NFL to number 64 or 70. And that's a steep drop. And therefore you got to deal with that.
With the tight ends, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with Kittle. It's the same thing with Trent. And so they have to take care of him. Kyle knows that. Kyle knows that Trent is absolutely vital. And as the chat pointed out, that Trent did this in Washington. And so he has a history of doing this. Trent likes his money, and he likes his money guaranteed. And he knows he's the best tackle in the league. Yeah. And he should be paid that. Yeah, he recalibrated the market at 20, but now it's time to recalibrate again. He needs to go on top. So they got to take care of him. They got to do this. Otherwise, season's done. Whatever games Trent doesn't play, you lose. Yeah, that's what we learned from last year.
If you're critical, like, instead of being critical of Trent Williams, what I think they should do, or what fans should consider, is the 49ers should have had the foresight to know, when they reacted so swiftly to Christian McCaffrey's brief holdout, that obviously someone else who's in that exact same position contract-wise, where they had more years but no more guaranteed money, and who's lived up to, the money that he's been given, I don't know why they wouldn't have already budgeted and planned for Trent Williams to want some restructuring happening.
One thing that I've written in my articles is that the Niner culture is wishing things into being, and it's come back to bite them. And this is one of them, is that they thought that, Trent's not going to want his money until next year, because this year his money is still guaranteed. And so next year he's going to want to come in and get money. No, because he's eligible to ask for an extension now. And so he's going to do that. And when they extended McCaffrey in the way they did, now I said at the time, and with you, that there's going to be other guys lined up saying, okay, I want the CMC deal.
Yeah, my turn now.
And so Trent is one of them. Kittle is next. Fred is next after that. All 4 of those guys are going to want the exact same deal, and they're all going to be justified in asking for it. And the Niners should have been prepared for that and weren't.
Completely agree. As Jubilee Ray says, folks know that no one's going to get paid except for Purdy next year. I don't necessarily know if that's true, but I think it is true that players who want money coming up are aware that Purdy's going to be the focal point of the media conversation next year. And so doing it this year allows them to get, to play with more leverage from the fan perspective. Even this year.
Yeah. Well, Kenny's saying, I think they're prepared. For the most part, I think they're prepared. But I
To
think
not have Trent? I don't.
that what Trent did surprised them because he still had a guaranteed year left. I think their thinking was, and yeah, I'm guessing, is that he would have come to them with this request next year. That's what they were hoping.
Yeah.
Didn't happen.
It seems
And
like
that's something you have to be aware
a lot
of.
of players.
Yeah.
Like they'd be like, oh, it's one last all-in year. So we're all going to, do the team-friendly thing and just play for each other. And it's like, okay, but I know if I break my leg that you're not going to hesitate to cut me. And I know that when Chris McCaffrey just sat out one time that you jumped to pay him. So do you value him more than me? Like, I feel like
that's the takeaway for Trent is that, okay, why did you jump in within 2 weeks? You got everything done with McCaffrey. Why not me? Yeah. I'm just as important, if not more so.
Completely agree.
And they were also hoping BA would wait till next year. Same thing, right?
But to me, that's just poor management on their part. Like you're saying, sorry, but Kenny said that they're prepared. I think that that's them being unprepared. Like hoping and wishing on a dream that everyone's just going to kumbaya it for a year is a little bit ridiculous. Oh, Tom went away. Tom went away again. Ooh, and you guys can barely see me. We don't usually go this late, but the roster cuts came out an hour later, so we pushed the show back. So now I have lines through me, and Tom is frozen. I'm thinking that Tom's going to come back because the last time that this happened, he did.
Again, sorry about that.
Tom, you're back. They're already preparing for Brock Ashley. They have a lot of cap space this year to carry over for Brock. Yeah, I agree that they'll definitely be prepared for Brock, but I think once again, that's also a conversation that's going to upset these players who wish that they were prioritized just as much as Chris McCaffrey or Brock is being prioritized. And then,
I think that to Kenny's point, are they prepared? I think that overall, big picture, they are prepared. They're trying to make sure that they can fit Purdy in and maintain the roster as best they can. So I think in that sense, they are prepared. But I think it caught them off guard on Ayuk and Trent that you need to be aware that they can ask for their money and demand it and do what they've done, that this was a possibility. Yeah. And they made their assumption that no, next year. And that assumption didn't hold true. So in that sense, they weren't prepared for those individual actions. But I would agree with Kenny, big picture, that they are making an effort to prepare to make sure that they can fit Brock in and keep as much talent as they can.
Totally agree. Now, JD, we already touched on this a little bit. For IR, we are assuming that both Ambry Thomas and John Feliciano tomorrow will be put on IR, and that will clear up 2 extra spots, probably for them to bring in tight ends, maybe defensive linemen. And yeah, what about PUP? We have
so we've got Dre on PUP, and in terms of IR, who from the 53 will go there? I would think that Feliciano and Ambry will be put on IR tomorrow, and then they'll make additional moves, JD.
Completely agree. And then for activated off of PUP, that was Hufanga. We did talk about that a little bit earlier, but I feel like maybe you came in or later, so I wanted to let you know. Really quickly, to finish off the position groups, we'll talk about D-line, which is a position that maybe don't have as much depth in as we would have thought going into this year or would have anticipated for a Kyle Shanahan team. So there is 9 defensive linemen, but the level of, how effective they're going to be is what's in question. Now, obviously, you have Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, Gross Matos, Kevin Givens, Jordan Elliott, Robert Beal, and then Sam
Okwanu.
How do you say it?
Okwanu.
That's
Okwanu. It's not how it's spelled, but that's how it's pronounced.
Okay, say it a little louder so everyone can hear.
Okwanu. So think of like Quan Alexander, Okwanu.
Sam Okwanu, which is once again just literally not how it's spelled at all. Nope. But that's why I looked up at you and I was like, help me, because I'm gonna butcher that, and not trying to be offensive, I just couldn't say it. How do you feel about the D line Do you think that they're going to look at the waiver wire and try to?
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to go shopping because they need more help.
Yeah.
Gross Matos is week to week, so you don't know what you're going to get from him, if anything.
Yeah.
And so at edge, you're looking at Bosa, Floyd, who's day to day, Gross Matos, who might not be able to play next week,
Yeah.
and Robert Beal, who's only flashed a little bit,
yeah,
and Aquanu. So
I
think they have to start looking. I'm sorry, Ashley, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying you have to think they're constantly rotating these guys. Like they need bodies.
Oh, sure. Yeah. During a game, you have to have a heavy rotation so you can maintain a high energy pass rush. But I think that they are going to shop at both
defensive linemen. I feel like it's crazy that they have 9. In years past, kept more.
Yeah, it's they might do something. Well, they've had 9 in the past, but they might do something with Gross Matos. I think that they're waiting to see what the evaluation is, given that he's week to week. Is what's he going to be like? But I also think that they went with 9, but it's a soft 9 in the sense of it's going to depend on what they do, if anything, in shopping. That if there's somebody that they bring off of waivers, but I think they could look at an edge and a defensive tackle and see what they can get.
Okay, I can see them doing that. Now, I do think that the defensive line is a harder position for them to get guys from than like tight end.
More competitive, yeah.
A lot more teams are going to be looking to pick quality guys of quality up earlier. But I agree that they need to add there. Now for linebackers, they kept 6. You have Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, D. Witters, Tatum Bethune, and Chris Robinson. I'm not surprised by any of these guys. Maybe I am hopeful that Devondre Campbell isn't just given the nod because he's a veteran. I think D. Winners had a really good preseason. I don't know if they're just going to start him on the other side of Fred Warner just because he's the veteran guy, but
probably. Yeah. Again, it's there's evaluation of veterans by this coaching staff.
Yes, and then we did talk about
they prefer vets, so I would think that Campbell is going to start. And JD's saying, no Jalen Graham.
Yeah,
but Graham made some diagnostic mistakes. I think that's what hurt him. Physically, he's got all the talent, but diagnostically, I think that he wasn't quite there in his reads.
I agree, but I think if he makes it, I could see them bringing him back and putting him on practice squad.
Yeah, I could see them hoping they bring
linebackers too.
Yeah.
It just might not have been like a priority. Like they're so stacked at that position that he might have been like the least impressive out of the good guys, if that makes sense. It doesn't necessarily mean they wouldn't want to have him on the practice squad if they could. Now, because he's good, I don't know if he'll make it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, we'll see. With the real issue is when Drake comes back, what's going to happen? Who goes? And it's going to have to be Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles or Tatum Bethune will have to be cut.
Yeah.
And they've got between now and when Dre returns to make an impact.
I'm hoping that they lean towards rookie or younger guys more because I feel like the league knows what Campbell is now, but unfortunately Kyle Shanahan tends to favor veterans over the younger guys, which I don't totally agree with, but that seems to be how it is. Now for cornerbacks, we have obviously Travarius Ward, Deandre Lenore, Isaac Yadam, Renardo Green, Darnell Luter, and Ambry Thomas. Now, as we've touched on, we assume that Ambry Thomas will be put on IR tomorrow. He's a broken forearm, and they'll be able to bring him back mid-season if, they need to for whatever reason. I think this is the deepest. We were kind of talking about their D-line being not having as much depth as maybe we've become accustomed to under the Kyle Shanahan Lynch era. Opposingly, I think cornerback is probably the deepest that they have been. We touched on they, let go of Sam Womack and Rakusin.
And they might try to bring Rakusin back after they put Ambry on IR.
Okay, I like that prediction. I like that prediction a lot. Interesting. And then safeties, we have Jair Brown, George Odom, Malik Mustafa, and then Hafunga, obviously. Now, Hufanga was activated. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to start week 1. Not trying to say he shouldn't, but I think he wants to be.
I think it's a long shot for him to play against the Jets.
Yeah, I don't think they should push it at all. Jair Brown, and then on the other side, having either Odom or Malik Mustafa. I thought Mustafa had a really good preseason, and that he would be able to hold down the fort until Hufanga gets back, if that's something he needs to do. And I think they have confidence for him to do that too. Then ending it on special teams, they have Jake Moody, Mitch Musowski, and Taylor Pepper. There you go. So no surprise there. Yeah, no surprise.
Yeah, those guys are going to be the fixture for a while. We'll see.
Yeah.
Kenny's saying that Renardo Green reminds me of Taxi. Yeah, I can see that. And we'll see what happens with Green. I would expect that he's going to be one of the three. That, I'm guessing that they're going to go with Ward and Green on the outside and Lenore inside. I think that's their best alignment, and that's what they'll do.
I like that. That's a good prediction. I like that a lot. I would hope so. Start getting younger for sure. Really quickly, I saw this out of the corner of my eye. Gore Jr. instead of Schrader on practice squad. First of all, they're not sure that they'll get Schrader back because he is waived, so he has to clear waivers. Also, I feel like I understand this from like a fan wanting to have the name, but I don't know if Gore was impressive enough to.
Well, he had 100-yard game, though. Granted that they were feeding him a ton, but
now he did choose to sign somewhere else as an undrafted guy. Do you think that maybe he doesn't want the pressure of being on the same team?
Maybe, but I would think that he would embrace it, and his dad would probably push for it, and his dad's part of the organization, so I can see the two of them wanting it. I'm just not sure if the Niners would want it, given that Gore is a munchkin and limited. I think that he doesn't really fit what they would want to do.
I definitely agree. But I heard that question not just asked on here, but on Twitter as well. I feel pretty good about their wide receiving position as long as Brandon Ayuk is on there. The quarterbacks I like. Like I said, I think deepest position group is probably that cornerback position. I also like the safeties, including the guys from the draft class this year. But definitely have to attack tight end and D-line before.
Yeah, they have to shop. Well, at tight end, it's essential because they've only got 2. So they're going to have to do that. But D-line, I think that they need to, and they know it.
Are you anticipating, and we'll end on this, because it's 13 days until game day for the 49ers. And you said you don't think that tomorrow John Lynch is going to be answering questions about the deal that was done with BA or Trent Williams.
He'll be answering questions, just not about signed contracts.
Agree. For, let's say, Brandon Ayuk first, do you think that it's something they're going down to the wire? Who's going to blink first? The 49ers don't think that Brandon Ayuk will actually sit out. They anticipate that he will play on that 5th-year option or accept a lower deal. Do you think that a deal gets done, or are you thinking that
I think it does. I think that BA is looking at last year and saying that the Niners gave in to final contract requests by Bosa
at the deadline,
4 days out. And so 4 days from the opener, I think that Ayuk is going to wait for that day, and both sides are going to know it. Both sides are going to do nothing, and then both sides need to compromise.
But that's just so frustrating. Like, I understand.
It is. It's very frustrating.
At this point, it feels like it would almost be silly for one of them to accept an offer today when they know that if they push it 10 more days, that the other side's going to be like sweating and potentially willing to accept something that they wouldn't accept today because it's going to be like so deadline.
Right.
But it just sucks because it's like, are you then worried that there's going to be a Bosa-esque start with the 49ers? Or maybe because he's been there practicing, not practicing, but like conditioning But there, in my opinion, there is a difference between like being in good condition and being in football shape. So
yeah. Well, that's the risk they're going to have to take. But based on what we've seen all summer, who would expect that Brandon Ayuk is going to accept a deal until it's right at the deadline?
Yeah,
I don't. I
Did
think
you
that,
think that
the Niners might think that he's not going to hold out. I think that he'd be willing to do that.
Yeah,
Just not for a long time. I think that he could hold out for a week, maybe
just
two,
scare them for a week.
and that's it.
Yeah.
But I'm still hopeful that they will come to a deal, but it's going to be last minute. And the problem with that is that if the Niners are worried that we have to know the numbers for Ayuk before we can do anything with Trent, then you're also pushing Trent to that same deadline time frame.
Yeah, which
and
is
Trent's not up to speed either. And now you've got a subpar Trent going up against one of the best D-lines in football. What's going to happen there? Yeah, it's the longer that these deals are delayed, the less of the chance, in my opinion, they have of beating the Jets. That the sooner the better to beat the Jets. The longer it takes, the worse the odds become.
Yeah, and I feel like the 49ers, when they've made it to the Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan, they've gotten out to a hot start, and they were able to secure that number one seed. They especially, and that was before. Now you have to think they have even more mileage on them. They're veteran. This is a veteran team. Obviously, there's some rookies, but older, and guys who have essentially played an additional season. If you add up all the playoff games that they played so far, without the relief that would come with at least winning it all. So not only do they have that extra mileage, but they have the mental load and weight of climbing that hill and not making it. I think a team like that, it's pivotal for them to have that extra bye week.
So. It is, but you are sharing your opinion with Jesse Naylor, who's adamant on this. Jesse will always pound the table and say they must start early because they must get the bye week. And my response to you and to Jesse, it depends on where they are in the playoff standings.
Okay.
It depends on what they have to do in the final week. My take is that the final week can be the bye week, depending on how the playoffs break out.
Do that, right?
Those guys might not have to play week 17, and there's your bye week. So hold your horses on. We must have a bye week.
You're making good points, Tom. You're making good points. I feel like they actually ran into that problem last year, or it was either the year before that, where it was
yeah. Well, it came into play last year.
Not try to play week 18, but now if we're going to take this week off, now we feel like we kind of have to play a little bit because you don't want to take too many weeks off. You're right. Okay.
So I understand that, but I'm just saying that there is a second opportunity for a bye. It's suboptimal, but it's there. Don't pretend it doesn't exist, Jesse.
Look at you, Tom, being optimistic.
No. Well,
finding
solutions
when there aren't any. Look at you.
Yeah, and Kenny's saying those 3 weeks off killed us. Yeah, because look how they played against Green Bay. They didn't play well.
What is drama? I don't know.
Drama. He's saying all the contracts. I think that's what your dad is saying.
Yeah. I think so too.
Yeah, I think we're all dramaed out. We're all soap opera'd out. We're all just saying, can you please, for the love of God, sign a contract and get this done?
I mean, every single week we anticipate that a contract's about to be signed. So next week, when you and I stream, it's going to be September 3rd.
Yeah, here we go again. I said that this week he would be signed.
I know.
Okay, so next week I'll say he signed. Because he has to be, and the final deadline is 4 days before. So yeah.
Because that's when it happened with Bosa. Do you think by the time that you and I talk next week, both Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams are going to get signed? Or do you think it'll be Ayuk take a 24 to 48 hours, then Trent is signed?
Next week is what? The third. No, because you still have to get the 4-day window that Ayuk will be waiting for that 4-day window like Bosa.
Okay.
So I'd say that he'll be signed after that 4-day. Once you get into that 4-day window, I think Ayuk will sign.
Okay.
Prior to that, I don't.
Okay.
It's going to drag out to the very end. We're all going to be really pissed, and it is what it is.
Do you think that? But even if you want to play Ayuk in game 1, you anticipate that you want him to practice that week. I don't know. Whole thing is so frustrating.
Yeah.
Are you under the assumption that Trent Williams won't get signed until Brandon Ayuk is signed? Like, what's Trent Williams' thing?
Yeah, well, that's what I've always maintained. But I think that the Ayuk thing going down to 4 days before the opener, the Niners are going to need to do something with Trent before then.
Yeah.
So I hope they do.
With priorities at
and
that
I think that they need to. One of the things that Coach said in our stream is that the Niners need ramp up time with Ayuk and with Trent. That if you don't have that ramp up, as you pointed out before, they don't ever catch up. It's like the dog chasing the car all season, that you never quite get to the recovery point and the ability to get into full game shape at the same time, that you're always chasing. And so they need that ramp up so that they don't chase during the season. I hope that that's at least what they do with Trent. But my expectation is that Ayuk's going to come down to the last minute. Al Bundy talk in Washington. Dawson was traded, but I'm not sure if they're going after Ayuk. The problem that Adam Peters had was the price tag. That he's not going to give Crazy Terry. He's not going, or Scary Terry. He's not going to give a first rounder. So the Niners would require that he give a second and a third. Now, he got a third back for Dotson, so maybe he'd be willing now, given that he's got that extra pick. He's got that extra third. And if the Niners are in a bind, they could say that, well, Khan in Pittsburgh, their GM, has been looking for flea market rate on getting Ayuk. And so he's always going to be somebody that's going to offer the very cheapest deal. And then Lynch could then turn to Washington, call up Adam Peters and say, a second in that third that you just got for Dotson, what do you say? I think Peters might be willing to do that now. So given that he's got more draft capital, he's in a better position to make a trade that the Niners might accept if they can't get across the line. But my expectation is still that they're going to get Ayuk done, but it's going to be literally last minute.
I agree with you, but that is a little nugget to consider with the Washington Commanders, that now they have more assets if they did want to go after Brandon Ayuk. I think BA wants to be here. I just think he wants to do what Bosa did and try to push them until the very last second. It's gone this far. I don't know if either party,
and therefore, just by logic, it'll keep going.
Yeah,
because that's what we've seen. I think for Ayuk, part of this is just respect. That he thinks that paying me market value is you showing respect toward me. And that's what this has been about. And so he's always wanted that market rate. The Niners haven't offered it. Will they offer it 4 days out? We'll see.
I do anticipate that Brandon Ayuk, and maybe I'm wrong, will be on the roster for week 1. I think he'll be signed.
Yeah.
Not I think on the roster in the way that he is now. I think he'll have his extension, is what I mean, to clarify. But
I think they both will. Ayuk and Trent.
The last 4 months. So
Well, but now that we're at the deadline, things can change.
Completely agree. Nothing. I feel like John Lynch has even said this. Like, there's nothing like a deadline to really speed up the process of these things.
He's right.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really appreciate it. It's so fun to have actual 49ers news to talk about it. Absolutely. And it's officially, I know it's a little bit more than a week, 13 days, but it's Jets week. They're going to start practicing. It's going to be very interesting. I'm excited to hear what John Lynch says tomorrow. I hope that the reporters come in strong, wondering, I care a little bit about the roster moves, but I mostly care about if Trent Williams is going to be protecting Brock Purdy and opening up a running option for this 49ers team, because honestly, nothing else matters more than that. So I'm looking forward to reacting to that press conference tomorrow. Make sure that you're to my YouTube channel, and we'll talk about that here. And make sure to follow Tom at 49ersCast on, NinerCast on
Twitter.
And make sure to read his article. His most recent article had a question from me on it. We've talked for quite some time today, so maybe we'll touch on that article a little bit tomorrow, because it's definitely like a wide view question. So I feel like we don't necessarily.
It's a great question. It speaks to the mindset of the team and what they need to do going forward to succeed, which is.
Everything. I was honored to be asked to be a part of it.
Oh, absolutely.
Everyone be sure to read Tom's articles. They're always very, very insightful and have a lot of good info in them. So, and I'm sure you'll be doing one on the roster updates that have happened.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm working on it.
Perfect. So like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow Tom on Twitter, and we'll be going live later on this week. Thank you guys so much. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks. Take care, everybody.